from sliding to a upper middle class status to down to middle class status. And today we're looking at Sri Lanka, which is suffering from economic crisis. Now this is a deep economic crisis that we're talking about. We see people out, lined up in queues right outside the fuel stations. People, they don't have food. So to talk about these challenges, we see Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe is joining us here exclusively for the first time on the Indian national television here on NDTV to talk to us about what it's been over the last 2 weeks. He's taken over on May 12th. Thank you, sir, for joining us here on NDTV.
Thank you for calling me.
Oh, thank you. My first question to you is, why did you accept when you were invited by Mr. Gotabaya Rajapaksa to take over as the Prime Minister? Did you already see it coming in terms of the economic crisis?
I accepted it because there was a crisis on and there was no one else who was willing to be Prime Minister. If I did not take this challenge, the country could have been in a much worse situation. I felt if I had come in and taken the challenge, I can at least slow down the economic decline, stabilize it, and then we can look at ways of turning it around. People without food, yes. Enterprises were closing down, and there was a lot of political instability. There were a campaign that the president should leave. It was being led by a lot of young people who were camping out on Galle Face.
Yes.
But by the time I came in, that issue had been resolved to a certain extent, because the Sri Lankan Bar Association had proposed that we reintroduce the 19th Amendment, which strengthened Parliament. It was taken away in 2020 after the parliamentary elections, and thereafter go in for a complete abolition of the executive presidency. By then the president had also announced that he was staying on in office, but he was willing to bring back the 19th Amendment and go for a complete abolition of the executive presidency. In that light, I went in and I thought my job now is, if I am wanted, I am certainly willing to stabilize the economy. So I took the challenge.
Okay, so what's changed after you took over as the Prime Minister? Because I believe your previous occasions, you have never had to deal with a situation as such as this. So
no, I don't think there is precedent.
Okay.
My party has one member, that's me. So therefore we are the most united party in Parliament.
Unfortunately, we see that it's just a single seat. You don't have the people's mandate. But
in a crisis, you can't look at a mandate.
Okay.
In a crisis calls for a person who is willing to take it on, and people think that person, he or she, is capable. So I took it on. A cabinet has been formed. There have been representatives from different political parties and groups, and we are tackling the issues. I must say, I have been able to speak with the president, and we've agreed on a program. I'm going ahead implementing it. The ministers are backing me, especially the Minister of Agriculture and the Minister of Health and the Minister of Energy. We are working very, very closely on stabilizing the situation here. How do we find foreign exchange? Our foreign reserves are zero.
Yes.
Some days there's nothing. Other days we have $30-40 million. It's difficult to imagine. I had $7.5 billion in reserve when I handed the government over. We've been helped really by the Indian government, the help that you all have given us with the lines of credit, the swap, and there have been help from some of the other countries too in different ways, the lines of credit. We can manage at the moment if this keeps going, but we have to come to an agreement with IMF, and I'm just focusing on that agreement.
Right. You were talking about how there are quite a lot of ministers who are backing you. Do you really have that majority at the moment? Because we see the chorus that is growing louder here in Sri Lanka, because if you're talking about the opinion polls, at least about 89 to 90% of the people are demanding that they want Gotabaya Rajapaksa to go home, because very recently we saw what's happening at even Gotagogama. You know, you see a lot of youth protesting for over 50 days. They say there's nothing going to stop them. So are you people's Prime Minister, or are you the Prime Minister in terms of Gotabaya Rajapaksa?
I'm the crisis Prime Minister. So there's a political crisis and an economic crisis. When I say the ministers are backing me, that's to resolve these issues. I'm not looking in terms of them coming and backing my party. Certainly as Prime Minister they have been helping me. I'm grateful to that. Opposition also hasn't been too hard. So there are two issues. One is the whole issue of the economy, how people are going to live. It's very, very difficult. You can't keep that aside while dealing with the political issue also. So we have, my focus has been on the economic issues. As far as the political issues are concerned, the parties must decide what's going to happen. But I think it's best that's done when the economic situation comes back to normal, at least we stabilize it. In the meantime, there can be discussions on what will take place, but already when I came in, there was already the agreement I mentioned earlier. But I've been involved in the political issues too. We met yesterday with the leaders of parties in Parliament and was able to come to an agreement in principle on the new 21st Amendment, which will bring back the 19th Amendment. I myself has proposed some changes in the parliamentary system, bringing in the oversight committees, increasing the powers of Parliament over public finance, and even a national council, which really is a committee of the political party leaders in Parliament, which can look at the broad policy issues. And we want the young people, the youth protesters and all to join these committees. I hope this will also help to reduce the political tension.
Have you had that discussion with the youth that you are talking about?
I put it out. I want the proposers to be, I want to get the former speaker, Mr. Jayasuriya, to sort of put flesh into the details, and then maybe they could speak with them. If they don't want to speak to me, we can have a group of people. I'm not saying no. The young people have, the young people and the people out in the streets have really made a political revolution. I won't say no to that.
Okay, so you're willing to speak, but I believe the common voice that we hear from these protesters, they say, you know, they just want the government to go. Do you really feel that? Because I want to try and, you know, understand the ground situation. You as the Prime Minister, you have taken over, it's been over 2 to 3 weeks. Have you really, after you took over this post, have you really gone on ground to check the reality of people? Because I personally see people, you know, some of them sitting on the streets. They are with their plates, at least they get food at the Gotagogama. You have long queues. I myself have stood in those long queues because I'm here in Sri Lanka. So have you personally, you know, gone through these, you know, where your normal common man is going through?
I know what they are going through, and there have been a lot of people who said, we'll help you to get this resolved economically. I think that's a positive response. The countries wanted some action to address the economic issues that they were facing, the hardship they were facing. You can understand, you are standing, some people are standing for 4-5 hours to get diesel at one time. There's a queue in front of the Prime Minister's office.
Yes. How long will that continue, do you think?
I think it got eased off. Now the issue is on diesel, which should come in, and on gas, which affects really the urban areas, not the rural areas. We are tackling the issue of gas too.
Why is there a difference when you say that, you know, not the urban areas but the rural areas?
No, for gas it's the urban areas. For diesel and petrol, it's the whole country.
Okay. So I want to understand in terms of, do you think this revolt by the Sri Lankans, the citizens, basically, do you believe this is just a protest, or do you think it's going to wean off in the next couple of days? How do you see this coming?
Well, the protest will go on because how long, I suppose the people at Galtface will have decided how long they are going to carry it out after the 21st Amendment, whether they are going to take the protest elsewhere or they are going to stay there. That's their decision. As far as government is concerned, we are not going to interfere.
Okay.
If they want to stay, certainly they can stay there and carry out their protest. But I feel the people also realize now that we are going to face a shortage of food.
Yes.
It's really two issues which are combined. One is the lack of fertilizer, which has led to the rice crop being reduced by about 1/3.
Yes. Sri Lanka was always self-sufficient.
That's right, and the other crops. So how do we get over that? We need fertilizer. If you have fertilizer, then from February onwards we can go back to self-sufficiency. So the second issue is that it's coming at a stage when there's a time when there's going to be a global shortage of food. Countries are not exporting food. So we will find from about October till about February. It's really going to be a difficult time for Sri Lanka. Let's hope at least the global food shortage really won't become a crisis of large magnitude.
Can you explain how worse can that get when you say, Sri Lanka, which has always been self-sufficient in terms of rice production, but then with the fertilizers ban, how worse can it get?
One is, remember, Russia and Ukraine are large suppliers of wheat. Russia number 1, Ukraine is number 5. They are into corn, they are I think into sunflower seeds. So there are so many areas, and that means when the wheat production is reduced, prices go up. That affects the prices of rice too.
Yes.
Same thing with corn, and corn means it also affects animal feed. Secondly, the shortage of fertilizer is also impacting on other places. Brazil, for instance, the sugar, their wheat, all is getting affected, even in US. So there's a shortage globally. There's a shortage created by Russia. There's a shortage in the countries that do cultivate food, and there's going to be a shortage similarly of meats, because the animals will also not have food, and that it's a question of how high will the prices go up, and then the countries are storing foods. So that is also sending prices up.
Okay, so we are going to see a huge crisis situation in Sri Lanka.
Yes.
People can go without food is
No,
what?
They need food. For instance, good example is Egypt. They were buying from Russia, and Ukraine now they are buying wheat from India. So like that again Africa needs food. So there is going to be a food crisis. Sri Lanka is going to be one of the countries affected. I mean, people expect Africa, yes, African countries will be, but from the South Asia and the Asian region, Sri Lanka will be the only country.
I would like to come to the question of bankruptcy here. Bankrupt Sri Lanka can't really tap 1.5 billion credit line from Beijing. As China is concerned, in terms of the IMF, may force delays. Now, how exactly are you planning to, have negotiations? Are you going to bring this up with China as well?
No, we are bringing it up with China. When the agreement was given to us, this rule is that you cannot utilize it unless you have 3 months of reserves. So at the time that we signed it, we didn't have 3 months of reserve. So the question is from our end, why did we sign it? Why did we not negotiate further with China and ask them to do away with this? And if it couldn't, we should not have signed it. Instead of which it was signed, and then this the 1.5 billion was shown as part of our reserves.
Yes.
And all of a sudden, country which had 0 reserves was showing about 2 billion in reserves.
Right.
Of the 2 billion, I think 1.9 billion could not be utilized. So whether it was just for the purpose of adding on to the reserves, I don't know. It's something that the Parliament must find out, why the central bank entered into this agreement.
So now with you as the Prime Minister, will you find out?
No,
will you want to?
No, Parliament will have to find that out. I would recommend that Parliament find that out. Meantime, we will speak to the Chinese government to see the possibility of amending the agreement.
So is Sri Lanka counting more help from India till the check arrives from the IMF?
We are counting for help from India. They will be the major country that will be helping us. There will be others, but India has done most of the work for us.
So I really would like to know that, drawing basically assistance from both the countries. This is to do with regard to India and China here. So there's a balancing act that's being done by Sri Lanka, given the geographical proximity, right, and the advantage. So do you consider India to be a trusted ally here as opposed to China? Because we've seen how China in the last 1 decade or so, they've gone all out to give you all funding, but you all are in deep economic crisis. Where is China?
China is a very friendly country to Sri Lanka. What is India? India is different. You are the other side of the coin. So are we. We have far more common with South India than you have in North India. Buddhism came from here. So we have to treat each other alike in that way. It's not like having friendship with Japan and China. We are very friendly countries. You have to realize that we are the other side of the coin.
Okay,
you have Hinduism, we have Buddhism. We took the Mauryan sense of kingship, you all went with others. So, but what is it? We as countries, we have different interests and we respect each other for that.
What's your interest? You just said interest. Yes. What's your interest in terms of China?
In terms of China, China has also been friends with us. History of China also goes back thousands of years. Once you send Buddhism to China, we had to follow and go there. So remember, India started all this. Amitya Sen's book, Argumentative Indian, has a very good explanation of it. I would recommend that you read it. But it's with India. I mean, we've all been one part of the region, the south. Here, I'm more familiar. I can easily fit into Chennai or Kerala without a problem. While similarly, people from the south can fit in here. China is a friend. Japan is a friend. Both are friendly countries. We need both of them. But when it comes here, India and Sri Lanka have interests. We have common interests because we were under the British. We had the British system of governance. We both believe that Indian Ocean should be free of big power rivalry. But we have had a long relationship with China. We had a long relationship with Japan. And China is now carrying on the Belt and Road Initiative, which is the issue that comes with. Belt and Road Initiative, from our point of view, it has no military significance. It's an economic one. So you can look at the economic side and decide, did the Chinese debt help us or not? But
I was coming to that. Has it been of any help?
So at the same time, we understand the issues between India and China, especially on the Himalayas. From 1962, Sri Lanka knows that issue. So we work with each other, and we work with each other very closely. The issues of terrorism, and it is the agreement after 1987 that we will not allow our soil to be used for anything that is harmful to India's national security. Similarly, India will also reciprocate. So that's we've been going on, and this relationship goes on despite what the governments have to say. The people go in, people come back. That's different.
Okay.
Okay.
So, do you there are a lot of allegations, or even for that matter, it's a fact of the matter.
Yeah.
You have several of the ministers, parliamentarians, and activists. I'm talking about economists as well, where they say one of the reasons why Sri Lanka is today in this state is also because of China. Do you agree with that?
No, there is the Chinese, the debt, but China is and Japan are the two largest creditor nations as far as we are concerned. The issue on China is whether Chinese loans were used on economically viable projects. Well, the issue there is that the projects were decided by Sri Lanka. For instance, Hambantota Harbour and the Mattala Airport were pushed by Sri Lanka. Chinese came in there and gave the money when Sri Lanka wanted it. So these really are. Did we make the correct assessment?
So you're putting the blame on Sri Lanka itself for choosing such the wrong projects, or even for that matter.
Yeah, China went along and gave the money, but remember, we are the ones with the big issues that we have on China. But otherwise, Belt and Road would be a way of integrating into the Asian system, but there are other.
It was not done right, is what you're saying.
No, selecting the projects, but our biggest problem is not the loans from creditor nations. It is the loans we have taken on the international market, the ISB, the international sovereign bonds, which really constitute nearly 49 to 50%, because the loans whether we got from China or Japan weren't projects, they were project loans, but we took ISBs and then we used it for so many other purposes. The issue is whether we should have taken so much of ISBs.
So Sri Lanka made a mistake, is what you're saying.
Well, I think we should have controlled it and put more of our money into developing the sectors of the economy. After the war was over, there was a lot of money available for the north and the east infrastructure, and people went ahead with it. Then we decided that we will go ahead with a construction economy. So the money was had to develop the infrastructure in Sri Lanka. Okay, there was extension of the southern road from Matara to Hambantota. Maybe we had even recommended that earlier when I was in government, but you took on two major, there was the Katunayaka highway, that's all right, but we took on some of these big projects which were really not economically viable. Added to that, that was only adding on to the burden we had with the ISBs. A lot of the other work was being financed by the ISBs when we were not really, when our budget was out of grace. Only in 2017 we got a surplus on the primary budget, and secondly our balance of trade was certainly not in our favor.
Yes.
And we were taking ISBs when the balance of trade was against us. At least the loans from the friendly nations had a gestation period, but this is what brought the economy really down.
The choice of projects.
Not the choice, the ISB lending. Choice of projects added on to it, but as far as the Hambantota harbour was concerned, we were able to get $1 billion back. That's
in terms of when you're talking about the kind of projects that you'll choose, Sri Lanka has a very strange fiscal economy, because the minute that the country faces trouble, when you know there is trouble coming, you'll immediately either sell the assets, key government assets, or privatize. For example, the recent Sri Lankan Airlines. Why is that?
Why do you sell Air India? The same reason. Okay.
No, but I want to know.
Oh, yeah, Air India was making so much of losses, you just couldn't turn it around.
No, but do you think
we have the same issue, and our economy is crumbling, so we couldn't support it anymore. The same issues that you all had at Air India, we have here.
So do you think privatization is the right strategy there?
What else can we do? When we follow the Indian government, also you question me.
No, but how far will you take this? I mean, how far will you go?
The Committee on Public Enterprises said that we'll have to shed some of the state enterprises. This has happened everywhere.
Okay, so is there more to come
India,
in the future?
China, we can ask the COPE what's the position on the.
So there are more in the offing.
There may be, I can't say there is, but certainly Sri Lankan is what we have.
Do you think there will be accountability when that's done? Either way.
There will be. I mean, I don't think there's too much of argument on this, on the Sri Lanka.
Right. Okay.
It's not a big issue in Sri Lanka.
Okay, right. So are any Indian businesses in touch with Sri Lanka at the moment, to take part in the building of Sri Lankan economy right now?
Well, some of the companies have been there and they've been getting involved in. There will be others that will come. We want to actually woo them once we stabilize the situation here.
Okay, so it is still in the offing, you mean?
Yeah, there are many who are looking at it. I don't think people will come immediately, but by next year there will be interest. Already I think Adanis are doing the West Terminal, and they are doing some projects out there in the north on renewable energy.
Okay. So I would like to really ask, you did talk about how especially there were certain, of course Sri Lanka did make mistakes in terms of choice of projects, or that was not really required at that point in time. We are here and talking about how, several people are echoing in terms of where they want wanted Rajapaksas to go home, and eventually it was just to Gotabaya Rajapaksa. Now the question is, will there be any corruption charges filed against Mr. Gotabaya Rajapaksa or other family members for, leading Sri Lanka to this state?
If they had violated the law, certainly they had to be prosecuted. Anyone, not only them, all of us. That's the matter for the investigating agencies.
So you hold all of yourselves responsible?
Not for the mess, but I am saying if there are any charges against us having violated the law,
right,
then the investigating agencies must go into it and decide whether to prosecute or not. You can see, as it going on, you can see the courts becoming more independent, and even the AG's department pushing cases, which is sometimes embarrassing to the state, to the government.
Do you know, is there a time frame? Because we see that protests still happening even as we speak.
Yes, that will go on, protests. So this is a matter for the agencies of the state to act, and there is intervention by outsiders, the intervention by the courts. I think if you look at the judgments made recently, there has been nothing to the advantage of the government.
But personally, how long would you want those youth to be there on the streets who protested?
No, I'd like them to get involved in the system.
When you say involved in the system, how?
Come in, take part in the committees, we have said, be able to have a dialogue with the government and the people. So they have to adjust into the next stage.
Is that going to happen very soon?
It's for them. If they are willing to, yes, it will happen soon.
It's an open dialogue.
Open dialogue, not only with us, with everyone else. How do they fit into the system? Are they going to stay out, or are they going to come in? That's the major issue that all youth have to decide.
Can I take that one question, a few of them that I spoke to when I was at Gota Gogama. I did ask a couple of them, and I asked them, are you willing to take up that dialogue with Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe? And they were of the opinion that they want the government to go. What do you make of this? Because they say they don't really want to have a dialogue. They want the government to go. They don't really want to, see a change, especially, of course, you have been appointed.
Okay, they can say their views, but what my question is, the government goes. At the moment, we are not in a position to hold elections. The general public don't want elections at the moment. They want the issues resolved. If you could have had elections, yes, I won't be here. There would have been elections, you would have all been campaigning. But I came in a situation where we couldn't hold elections.
Right.
And most of us of that view. So if the government goes, what do you do? He offered the leader of the opposition. The leader of the opposition didn't want to take the premiership. There were others who were not willing at the moment to take the premiership. So in that circumstance, normally in normal circumstances, you have gone for elections. You can't have elections. What do you do?
So when you say you can't have elections now, is that the upcoming one, will it happen or not?
Which one?
The upcoming elections.
The upcoming elections will be 2020, end of 2023 or early 2024.
Oh, yes.
But by that time we should get over this.
Stabilize.
And there should be money. When we have no money, not only dollars, we have no rupees. And look, elections is not only government spending money. Elections is also political parties spending money. Where do the political parties get the money? From private businesses. So if those businesses are down, how can they give us money?
So when you say
when there are no donations, when there are no donations, when there is no fuel, how can you campaign? When there is no electricity, how can you have meetings? So it's impossible unless you come back. You can't have meetings. You can't use the TV. You will have no fuel, and there is no political donations and contributions to a party.
So are you saying it's unlikely to happen the 2024?
The 21st amendment will be passed by Parliament, but it doesn't call for elections.
Okay.
The abolition of the executive presidency also means a referendum, and we just can't hold a referendum. Look, you have to address that issue. That's what's called responsibility.
Okay, finally,
you can't run away from it. Yeah.
Yes, okay. Finally, you have also said how you want the youth to come forward and you want to have a dialogue about it. My question to you here is, I believe over the past 2 months or so, you've seen the Sri Lankan uprising. Several youth have been taken in custody as well. They've been protesting peacefully. What is your reaction to that, with
police using the brute force on them. Do you stand by that? Why do you want your police to immediately resort to them in terms of tear gas, water cannons? Is that the way?
Look, the decision whether to remand a person, young or old, is made by the magistrate, not by the police. And the police have, in respect of that area, arrested members of parliament. Other members of parliament have been named as suspects. They are taking down statements. So there have been a lot of members of the local authorities who have all been arrested on one side. Similarly, they have asked people to come in here, make statements and go away. This issue came up to me that they were being taken in. The IGP said he'll look into it, but I told the people the Bar Association is working with the police, so speak to the Bar Association. So we have a line of communication, and then of course the lawyers must go there and make out their case. But anyone who's charged would be produced before courts, and it's for the magistrates to decide. A lot of people have been released. Then there has been the burning of about 50 houses belonging to members of parliament.
I believe that happened when the pro-government protesters launched an attack.
But most of those members were not involved. They were not even, many of them were not even at the Temple Trees meeting. So that's one. Then two members, one member was killed when he was travelling on the road. Another member, opponent of President Rajapaksa, Kumar Velgama, he was taken. He would have been killed if not for the fact some local people got in and rescued him. You better ask him what's happened. So that's what the question we are asking. It's not only people who have been at Golface, but of members who have not been there. And you can't allow a parliamentary democracy to be treated that way. So that's an issue that we have.
No,
and I'm asking the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association to come in and give a report on all the incidents that have taken place.
But do you think that this incident would have taken place had it not been, where the pro-government protesters, if they had not launched an attack? Do you think this would have been, from the anti-government protesters?
What happened was on the grounds there. I was in one of the hotels nearby, I had gone for a wedding, and the issue got resolved. The pro-government protesters were chased off. Their buses were stopped.
So the pro-government protesters were chased
off
by the anti-government?
Not anti-government.
They were chased away.
The protesters in Golface were there, and they were chased off. Because there were very few protesters at that time. But in the surrounding area, the people in the surrounding areas like Slave Island came to their defense and chased away the pro-government demonstrators.
Okay.
I know the area because I've represented it. I know a lot of the people who live there, and they came and chased them away.
So the people who are protesting at the Golface or the Gota Go Gama are responsible?
No, I'm not saying that. Listen to me. That you are not allowing me to finish it. Okay.
Please.
So they came, and the people in Colombo came and chased away them. And as far as Colombo was concerned, by about 2:30 or 3, the issue was over. I think by 2 o'clock it was over at the site. I was watching it. And by about 3 o'clock, people have been somewhere dumped into the lake in Colombo, the Bere Lake. Some of the buses were burnt, and the police had to step in and to ensure that these people were able to get out of Colombo. We didn't want them hanging around in Colombo. I was not in the government, I spoke with the IGP. I said, we might as well clear them out of Colombo. So that was over. The burnings took place at 11 in the night. What is the connection? The burnings took place 100 miles away, 150 miles away. Now what that is the connection, that is the one that I question. Let's say the people in Golface acted in self-defense, or the people in the surrounding areas like Slave Island came to protect these people. So that's over there. We closed that chapter. That's being investigated by the police, those who came in, those who acted in self-defense. But what has happened is outside that. Why was Mr. Velgama, who was going back home in the night, attacked? Everyone knows who Kumar Velgama is. Why was this member of parliament had nothing to do, had come here, the deputy minister? He was returning home. Why was he and his 2 security officers killed?
So when
and then why were these homes set on fire? That's what we want to know. I think you have to take action. Anyone's house. I am against setting fire to houses and property. I have been against that always. So whether it belongs to the government party, opposition party, you have to take action.
So how about those who were attacked at, especially the anti-government protesters?
What?
Anti-government
There are
protesters.
no anti-government protesters.
I'm talking about the protesters who were sitting at Gota Gogama and protesting. There were a few of them, right?
Few of them
who were attacked.
They were attacked. So that's why the police is taking action against those who came.
Okay.
That's all. And then when you look at the clips, you see people fighting each other. So they have to question everyone who's identified, whether they belong to the youth protesters or the government protesters.
So the identification is on.
That's why some of them have been called up. Yes.
Okay.
So that's the personal law. You can by association is looking after them. So I don't think there's a risk of anything happening to them. But the other inquiries must also go on.
Okay. And I just want to understand one final question that we're ending here is, finally, I believe after speaking to the people at Gota Gogama, several protesters, several of the citizens here, they say they will continue their protest. What is the final word from your side to them?
Certainly, go ahead. We will protect you. I have a delegation which is to negotiate with Gota Gogama. If they want to, I can give you the website that we have here. Certainly, if they want to protest, they are free to do so. We give them all protection and all facilities that they want.
Do you want them to continue?
If they want to continue, what can I do?
All that they're demanding is they want Gotabaya to go home. If they,
yes, so that demand is
the
there.
slogan says that if he goes home, we will go home.
Yes, so that's up for the president and for the protesters to decide.
Right. And what's the final word that you would like to give, to the citizens of Sri Lanka in terms of the economic turmoil? How do you plan to, lift this entire the country of 22 million out of the crisis here?
We have to work together. We have to work together, and we can pull this country out. Both of the economic crisis we have, and we work together, we can resolve the political crisis too.
Do you have a time frame?
Soon as possible.
Well, thank you, Mr. Ranil, for joining us here on NDTV.